Welcome to MeatsPad, a platform dedicated to sharing breakthrough knowledge that is accessible to the meats industry. On each episode, we will hear from meat specialists and professionals to talk about numerous topics in meat science, including animal welfare, meat production, meat quality, food safety, and so much more.
Hello, meat folks. Welcome back to the MeatsPad podcast. This is Phil Bass. Francisco is out making the world a better place for us meat enthusiasts. And I'm here with a friend of mine who's kind of new to the meat industry, relatively new to the meat industry anyway, but Chafik Barbar. And Chafik has kicked off a program, a company that's kind of trying to address some of the challenges we have in the industry right now. And so first and foremost, Chafik, welcome, and tell us a little bit about Marble.
Hey, Phil. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
A little bit of a background on myself and Marble. So I grew up in Nebraska. I been in ag tech for the last 20 years or so. I started my career as a software developer and mainly in ag and food tech. Been an entrepreneur for most of my career, built a company and exited that company. And then went out and did an MBA out in Boston at MIT. And right when I was graduating, I stayed in touch with the people that I started my first company with. And I knew I wanted to get back into the food and ag tech space. So I looked at what the landscape and what's going on. And this would have been probably right after COVID happened. So it would have been probably April, May of 2020. Mm-hmm. And as we looked at what's going on, obviously a lot of industries took a real hit with COVID and major resets, and the food supply chain was one of those. And specifically meat processing, we looked at that, and at the time, my thesis was meat processing, due to the heavy reliance on human labor, is probably one of the weakest links in our entire food chain. Yeah. And that's really what I wanted to go chase and see how do we help in that area. So brought a good team together, recruited people from my past life. So went after people who really understand the status quo. We talked to people in the meat science space, and we spoke to them about the constraints of how things work. Then I recruited a group of talented engineers, and we all came together. And again, our thesis is how do we bring relief to the labor-intensive tasks in meat packing. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit kind of the genesis of Marble and why we came together. We look at beef, pork, in particular on the fabrication floor. And again, our mission is not necessarily people leave and the robots come in, but rather how do we make the job a little bit easier, a little bit safer for both the worker and the product, and that's what we do.
So. I'll confess to the audience, in March of 2020, when the world was slowly disassembling on us around our ears, I was interviewed for a podcast for a partner of ours, the National Provisioner, and the question was brought about, is this going to is all of this situation that the world was encountering, is this going to force the hand of automation, and especially in the beef industry, because that's the area that I spend most of my time in. And I said, absolutely not. Automation has no place in the beef industry. Almost in exactly a year later, my tune had completely changed 180 degrees, and mostly because I met you and other folks in the Marble business and saw, maybe these engineers do have a solution. Maybe there is a way to bring more automation in to, like you said, not necessarily replace the person doing the task, but enhance their productivity and help them. So what are some of the technologies, if you can share, what are some of the technologies that Marble's bringing to the industry or working on right now to bring to the industry at the moment?
Sure. So really, again, our focus is bringing relief to that labor intensive task. So if you look at across the meat processing facility, it's really on that fabrication floor. So from when that carcass is on the rail all the way to when that primal or subprimal is getting into a box, there's a lot of people that are involved. Actually, we've done some work where we looked at, from like when you breed that animal all the way to like when that cut of meat hits the shelf of at the grocery store. 86% of that labor that gets involved in producing that cut of meat that we all consume is actually done within that 24 hours at the meat processing facility. So it's we're pretty efficient on both sides, but when it comes to that fab floor, the efficiency is at least in terms of automation, it's not there. It's we're very efficient in terms, using with the human labor. So that's what we look at. So. The first product that so we spend a lot of time on the floors of these plants, and we try and ask the right questions, and what we're trying to get to the bottom of where can technology bring an impact in a relatively short period of time, where the payback is there. We're not just redeploying one or two people at a time. We're redeploying 10, 15 people to go focus on more value jobs. And the one that surfaced as a good candidate for automation is the pack off. So that is past that cryovac machine all the way to when that product, that cut of meat, gets into a box and gets sent away. So that's the first product we're bringing to market, and it is essentially that sortation and boxing of those meat products. Today, in a given meat facility, you'll have 20, 30 people. All they do is they're boxing meat, and that's it's a pretty tedious job. It's a little mind numbing. Humans can be doing better things, and that something like that is really prime for automation. So that's the product we're bringing to market. We look at other applications. We look at applications at the beginning of the fabrication process. We're always looking for these areas where it's less chaotic inside of the facility. People typically, they'll come to us and say, "Hey, can you build me a robot where, if Chafik doesn't come to work or Phil doesn't come to work, I can bring the Phil robot and he can do the job." And that's more the movie version of how this stuff works. You need to identify those areas where it's product is flowing. You can control that, and it's there's not a lot of humans playing in that space. As much as we'd like to think humans and robots can play together nicely, we humans are not very consistent, and robots don't like that.
Yeah. Well, and that's something that I brought to mind back when I first said, automation, it's not going to fit in the meat industry, especially the beef industry, as variable as these carcasses are. However, what I'm learning is that there are engineering solutions out there, and I've had a chance to interact with a number of your engineers over the past couple of years, and the abilities of computer vision and artificial intelligence, software packages that are essentially the brains of these chunks of hardware that will eventually be installed. That's where the major advances are coming about, and ultimately, it may indeed be able to handle the variation that's experienced with those beef carcasses. Is that right?
Yeah. No, I mean, yes, if you look 10, 20 years from now, I do see a day where the robot, and I use the word robot loosely. It's automation.
Yeah.
It's where it's doing it's doing the heavy lifting of most tasks inside of meat facilities. But given where we're at today, and again, we needed automation yesterday, so I can't sit here and tell our customers that give me 5 years to get this figured out for you. They just don't have 5 years. So our approach again has been asking the question of how does automation, how does robotics help that human do that job a little bit easier, or maybe the reverse. How can that human help automation do what it needs to be if the technology is not there?
Yeah.
And I think once you start looking at it through that lens, I think it's just the feasibility of this technology becomes it is achievable. The cost gets lower, the time to impact gets a little bit faster. And again, you still want to dream about what does this look like in 10 years from now, but it's all about those baby steps because the industry needs help, and just the time is not on our side.
Well, we applaud you for the the task that you're taking on. And for all our meat processing listeners out there, especially the ones holding the knife in their hands at the moment, don't worry, your job is still very, very safe. And in fact, may just be enhanced once this technology hits the floor. And so last thing I want to ask you then is, you have taken on Goliath here. Why did you decide to tackle this, the meat industry, and specifically target beef to begin with?
Yeah, no,
Oh my.
yeah. I don't know. So you're right. I mean, people, people ask me, and they look at what we're doing, and they say, you want to do this in the U.S. Where the volumes are crazy,
Yes,
and you want to retrofit existing plants, and you want to do this for beef, God be with you.
Yeah.
So so I'm not sure what to make of that, but that's where the pain is. I mean, it really is. Like I was saying earlier, I like to work on problems that matter and problems that make an impact. And this is what I tell all my engineers. Like, you want to work on something that's difficult, and once you solve it, it makes a real impact. Like, here it is. So it's a real problem, and just from a business standpoint, it's as long as you're working on something that matters, financial outcomes should be just a byproduct of that. So the problem feels real. We go out there and we talk to a lot of people as we build this technology, and we're always looking for those signals. Is the industry ready for this stuff? And everything we see out there and we hear, it confirms that the time is right to do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I would agree wholeheartely with you right there on that. The industry is very, very hungry for it. It's needed. People still want meat. That's been justified over and over in many different research investigations and marketing research and everything. And so people want the product, but it is a demanding task. And so if we can help the folks who are executing this with a little bit of automation, I think that's a really noble feat. I heard you say one time, smart people want to work on something that matters. And I don't know if that's your quote or if you've borrowed that from someone, but I'd own it if it was.
I hear it all the time. I see it.
I think it's fantastic, and I think that's exactly what your team is. It's a young, dynamic bunch of folks who are pointing in the right direction and working hard to find a solution to a challenge that we definitely need to address. And so, thanks for all you do, and thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Right on.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Thanks.